So as you can tell, this is an album that has taken quite a while to process and consume and understand every little bit of it before I could even attempt to review it. Not that there's ever a time limit or anything on reviewing albums, there isn't, there shouldn't be. It should always be when you're confident enough to speak on it, that's when you should review it, and this is just one of those cases. At this point, is it really worth me introducing Nick Cave? Probably not. I mean, you should know him by now, especially if you're in the world of music. I'd be very surprised if you've never come across the name Nick Cave. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds have been killing it really since the 80s. They've been putting out classic albums every decade. So many albums in their discography are considered classics. It's a remarkable career. Do I personally love every album in their catalogue? Not really, no. I do like pretty much everything I've heard, but there are only a couple that I could say I genuinely love. And Ghosteen is said to be the album that wraps up the trilogy of Push the Sky Away, Skeleton Tree, and Ghosteen. And if you've been following Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds for the past few years, you will know the story of Nick Cave's son dying to an awful freak accident, falling off the edge of a cliff and dying. And so that was the inspiration behind Skeleton Tree, which was a very good album, but I think Ghosteen is really the album that digs further into the loss of his son. This to me, it just really feels like everything that we heard on Skeleton Tree, but just taken to a new level, taken above and beyond just the pain and heartbreak of coming to terms with losing your son. Something that's just so specific that anyone listening to Nick Cave could not possibly relate to something like this. Like, this is just so niche in terms of its subject matter, which makes it, I think, more admirable for a lot of listeners to kind of listen to something like this and get into the world of what Nick Cave is feeling. And initially when I was listening to this album, that was something I struggled with, not necessarily the subject matter, but just kind of honing in on what Nick was saying at points, because the songs are so somber, slow, patience testing. It was a bit of a chore to begin with, until I gave it further listens, and then eventually the beauty of it all, the kind of harrowing beauty of it all, just kind of started to unfold and became clearer and clearer. I started to feel like I was in the environment of the album cover. Just everything became clear. I was just walking in the meadows and everything just looked so heavenly in the weirdest way. Sun Forest is the perfect way to describe that feeling as well. Just the minute that track came on, I just felt like everything became clear, like it was just a sunny morning, and finally I just understood it all. Nick explores so many things on this album, questioning Jesus at points, questioning what even there is to life anymore, the purpose of everything. How can he find peace? Where is peace? What is peace? And I do love at times as well where he's exploring these things in such a profound and detailed way, and then there are other times where he's just touching on it in the most simple way, and yet it's still incredibly impactful regardless of how poetic it may be. The Christian imagery as well on the track Waiting for You is really interesting as well, how he likens the idea of, you know, the Jesus freak in the streets saying he is returning. You've all seen those in any town centre, in the UK especially, just people like chanting religious things. And he somehow manages to look at that in a somewhat positive way by saying, you know, faith goes a long way sometimes. Like, you know, it may be a Jesus freak, but in fact just having that faith in something can really bring peace to yourself. And then the refrain of him saying, you know, he's waiting for you in regards to his son, the way he says it just has so much emotional impact, and yet again it's just so simple, but you can just feel like the cracks in his voice. Oh, it's such a chilling moment. And then on the flip side, we do have moments on the album where he's just imagining being with his son, whether it be physically in that moment being with his son, or just picturing him one day being in heaven finally with his son living at peace. That's how I interpret the track Galleon ship specifically, where he's just picturing this idea of flying across the skies and being with his son and just not really having a care in the world, thinking about anything else. And for some reason, I can't not think of How to Train Your Dragon 3 on this song. The way he's talking about like flying through the sky just reminds me of that scene with Toothless and the white dragon that he falls in love with, and they're just flying through the sky. The colour palette is absolutely gorgeous. It's just such a beautiful moment in the film. Honestly, one of the best scenes in cinema I think I've seen all year. And somehow Nick describing that in this song makes me picture that for some reason. It's so weird, but I can't not shake it out of my mind. The 10-minute title track is one of the most beautiful moments on the album as well, where again he's talking about how he's just dancing with this Ghosteen, which obviously is referencing his son who is a ghost teen because he died at 15 years old. And again, you just picture this scene of just like Nick and the ghost dancing around, and everything just looks so stunning and everything just feels right in the world. But obviously it's just again in his imagination, and you take that moment away and it's gone, and it's really sad. And then the line later on that he repeats a couple of times where he says there's nothing wrong with loving something you can't hold, which I can only imagine if you're someone who's lost a beloved person in your life, perhaps a parent, a sibling, a best friend. That line just must, it just must carry so much weight behind it. Again, like I've already mentioned, it's just so simple and straight to the point, but it's something that just carries like 1,000 emotions all in one, despite the fact that it is just such a simple sentence. All of these things were just not something I came across at all when I was listening to this for the first time. It all just went over my head. I couldn't really grasp anything, but just that late night walk listening to this album really changed my perspective of this completely. It was like that was a perfect setting to play an album like this. It was like I needed to match the darkness and loneliness of what Nick Cave was going through to really feel and understand the things he was saying. I don't know what it was, but it just somehow worked. It's like when he says the line, "Moon won't get a wink of sleep tonight if I stay all night and talk," which is like, it's like I needed the moon to be there to join Nick on this journey for me to actually be empathetic towards this journey that he's going through. As I've already mentioned, this album has such a minimalist, somber tone to it the whole way through, just constantly for 70 minutes, and nothing quite captures that minimalism quite like the track Leviathan. Just this simple harmonized vocals with the just really reaches into you. It's just so eerie and strange. It's like he needs to remind himself the whole way through the song that his baby loves him and he loves his baby. Like he just has to keep saying it just to, again, bring peace of mind, just to try and cope with it all. But then when you finally get to the track Hollywood, which is the closing track, and it's 14 minutes in length, a mammoth lengthy track here. You do really realise that his son's death has started to make him question his own death. You realise at this point that he's come to terms with the fact that his own death is awaiting him one day, and it's essentially completely inescapable. And he does that in such an interesting way by once again using religion as a means to try and understand it all, but this time it's not Christianity, it is in fact Buddhism. The Buddhist story he's focusing on in particular is the story of Kisa, who lost her child through illness. Her child got sick and died, so she went to Buddha and asked if there was a way to bring her child back. Was there anything Buddha could do to just end her misery and bring the child back? And the only way that Buddha would allow Kisa to do this would be to collect a mustard seed from a family where no one had died. So she goes searching around, every family she goes to, there is not a single family that she comes across where no one hasn't died. Someone has always died in every family that she comes across. And so by that point, she realizes that this is it. This is not me on my own. Everyone goes through this, and so I have to work my way through this death, this awful tragedy, and seek enlightenment. And by that story, Nick essentially brings it to his own personal story and realizes that everybody's losing someone. And again, like calling back to the opening track with the looking for peace, Nick also has to realize that he's waiting for his own death to come one day, which ends off the album in such a tragic way, but it is incredibly potent and powerful. Like the poetry that this man comes out with is unmatched by anyone, and that's without me even touching on so many of the lyrics on this album. It's amazing. It is amazing. It's just an album that's grown on me more and more as time's gone on, and it's beautiful. At this point, I can only hope that Nick himself is getting better after this, but I'm just so thankful, and so many of his fans will be thankful that he's able to turn something like this into such amazing music. I think this is easily the best of the 3 albums he's dropped this decade, without question. And yeah, I'm gonna go 9 out of 10. I think this is absolutely fantastic. An album that I'm just gaining more and more out of every time I listen to it. It's unbelievable how this album at first was just not really hitting at all, but then it slowly just crept up on me in weird ways. One of the best albums of the year for me, without a doubt. Hopefully you're feeling the same about it as well. Let me know what you think of this here in the comments. Have a good day. Thank you for watching, and subscribe. Goodbye. I'm tired now.